welcome to this edition of The Public Square. I'm Wayne Shepard here with Dave Zanotti, and also at the table we've got Rob Walgate, Jeff Sanders, and Alan C. Duncan, and wow, the news has been hot and heavy lately, Dave.
It's funny, Wayne. Usually you get one of those, do you remember where you were when? And then it's a long time before anybody asks that question again. Yeah. Well, I've had the question now twice in 8 days, and most people are saying the same thing. My head is spinning because of all the changes that have been happening in our country in regards to the presidential election.
I keep waiting for Jack Bauer to show up.
As long as he doesn't bring Devane with him. Was it Robert Devane or Richard Devane?
William Devane.
William Devane. As long as he doesn't bring William Devane with him and try to sell us any gold. Okay.
No, please.
All right. All of you that watch 24, are you actually rewatching 24 now?
Rewatching.
You were too young for 24 the
No,
first time.
I watched it. I jump in like season 5 or 6, but now my son wanted to start it, so we were doing it as a family. So
how many times can you kind of get flipped upside down in a period of X weeks in regards to a presidential campaign? Obviously, we're talking about the first event being the attempted assassination and all that entailed. I want to also, again, encourage people, if you want to hear something that you're not going to hear twice on radio, go back and listen to the interview we did with David Mazura, the detective from Pennsylvania who was just a few feet away from the president when it all happened. It's one of the most compelling, I would say the term genuine. I wouldn't say raw, I would say genuine experiences that you can have from someone who was there, listening to them processing just a day and a half after it happened. And the responses to the program have been remarkable. So then we move forward another full week and a day, and you have President Biden withdrawing from the presidential election. And people are basically kind of shaking their heads some are saying, well, of course, that's obvious. We saw that coming, and so on and so forth. The people that are having the hardest time dealing with it are people who do the work of public policy and or elections and or media coverage, because the professionals in the field acknowledge that they do this every day for a living, and no one has ever seen this before. Not just in our lifetime. It's never happened before. You've never had a seated president who is the official nominee, well, one vote from official nominee, who's actually run in 50 state primaries, won them all, and now with the nominees heading in, with the delegates heading into the convention, withdraws from the race.
Yeah. Came close when Johnson in 68, but that was in the month of March, so it was much earlier. And I remember I was in high school. I remember very clearly the moment on television when he appeared and said, I will not accept the nomination.
Yes. If nominated, I will not run. And if drafted, I will not serve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the other thing about this, Wayne. You said appeared on television. We haven't seen Joe Biden since this announcement came out on X, no less.
Yeah. At the time of this conversation, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're 24 hours removed from the announcement. That's the interesting part. It did come out on X. X beat I believe, cable news and network news.
That's been going on constantly.
12 or 14 minutes. And we're told that the White House staff found out about it, many of them, the same way that we found out about it.
The palace intrigue here is simply impossible to cool down. And that's why we want to talk a little bit about process, because people are wanting to know what's next. And this is going to unfold over a period of several weeks. Now, if initial reports, you read something like the Washington Post, they ran a piece and gave so typical mainstream media. The article,
the size of the headline. I know where you're going. Yeah,
this is. Oh, yeah. Could you believe you could get a headline that big on your phone?
The font. Wow, it was huge.
It was. It was like World War II size font.
Yeah. I only remember one other font like that. It was Nixon resigns.
Yeah, I mean, so then we go to their article that came out a couple of days later, basically saying, okay, here is what's going to happen next. And they've got all of this stuff chronicled with charts and graphs, and if this happened, then that happens. You know what? Says who?
Right.
If something's never happened before, where do you predicate precedent? Where's it coming from?
I could write a book on all the prophecies I have heard. I'm talking about from political pundits.
Yeah.
Just over the past 4 years of what's going to happen next, and they're wrong.
Yeah.
90% of the time.
Well, and we've had periods where polling has been way off as well. Now, it's comes and goes. It depends. I mean, there are a lot of pollsters that have gotten smart and are getting a lot closer to what it takes to do a real poll because they're tired of being embarrassed. But okay, so what is next? People want to know what's the process.
Well, like you said, it's unprecedented. We're not 100% sure what is next, but what's been interesting is to watch the people fall in line to endorse Vice President Harris to be the nominee. It kind of reminded me of back in 2020 when Jim Clyburn, right before Super Tuesday, went behind Joe Biden, and then all the dominoes began to fall. That's what it reminded me of. As soon as, right after President Biden released the statement, he then released his endorsement. Well, soon thereafter, other endorsements started flowing in. And I think you're going to continue to see that as they lead up to the convention.
That brings back Inauguration Day, and I'm sorry for repeating the same old story. And I don't know that it can ever be said or reminded enough. But Joe Biden did not fare well running for the presidency in 2020 in the primary process. He was not the front runner. He was not predicted to win. He was a compromised candidate because the progressive left was very much in charge with Bernie Sanders, and the establishment Republicans, or establishment Democrats.
You said it right the first time.
Oops. Yeah. Whatever. The other guys in the party, and each of these parties is broken up in at least 4 wings, so they think we're a 2-party system. That's a fantasy. But the farthest left was leading the parade, and the rest of the Democrats were getting nervous. And so basically, what they decided to do was to go back behind closed doors, and they cut a deal. And they basically utilized the harmony between Joe Biden and the Congressional Black Caucus and Congressman Clyburn. And that was how the whole deal went down. And we watched it in real time, and some people were willing to call it out loud. Well, when you get to Inauguration Day and everybody's on the stage, and this is documented in media, it's been recorded, people heard it, they saw it, it's been documented. George W. Bush walked over to Jim Clyburn and said, "So you're the savior. You're the one who made all this happen." The Republicans knew what happened. There was a backroom deal that was cut, and that secured the platform by which Biden could move into the process, and then the machine took over.
And the machine did take over because one of the first things that President Biden, when he was the nominee, said is in regards to picking the second line on the ticket was that certain boxes had to be checked,
right,
as far as a few characteristics that needed to happen for that person to be eligible to be the vice president. So, and the interesting thing about that, though, when you talk about the debate process in 2020 with the Democrats is, and we're talking about rules now as it leads up to the convention, let's look at the rules then. I mean, they allowed Bernie Sanders to be on that stage. Is Bernie Sanders a Democrat? They allowed him to be.
No, he's actually a registered independent.
But they allowed him to be on the stage because it benefited them. Then it got to the point to where it may not benefit them, and he had a legit chance to win. So they said, wait a minute, that's enough of that.
Never mind.
That's when they decided to rig things once again against poor Bernie, right?
Well, and poor Bernie has had a rough run of it. So as far as precedent goes, how will we know that Kamala Harris, who now has 50 state Democrat chairman backing her campaign, that's verbal, that there's no signed documents that have binding legal authority. Now, what that clearly says is if you're a Democrat in any 50 states and you decide that you don't want Kamala Harris and you're going to mount an effort against it, you're bucking the state party chairman. So that's a first pretty big telltale sign on something coming up from the bottom, so to speak, from the grassroots. So all these delegates go to the convention, and what happens on the vote?
Well, in the first round of vote, this is where the mess starts because they're supposed to be committed. Those delegates are supposed to be.
Alan, this system drives him nuts.
Well, they're supposed to be committed to who the people in the state wanted, but who the people in the state wanted
was Joe Biden.
He's withdrawing his name, but did the people in the state really want him to begin with? Because they really didn't allow a contested primary in 2024 for the Democratic nomination to begin with. So it's been rigged from the beginning when it comes to this.
Yeah.
Well, that just makes me think about the fact that the Democrats had in their midst a Kennedy who was running for this nomination. And he was essentially forced out to become an independent, to run as an independent. He actually is somebody who has a bit of a grassroots following. He's got some name recognition, but they've got themselves into this corner where he's not even an option for them
because they can't control him.
Well, let's play the scenario. If Kennedy were to come up back through the Democrat channels and say, okay, and he mobilized all of his states to try to become the nominee, does he have any chance to get enough delegates? And how will the voting go? I mean, is it truly an open convention or is it a closed deal?
Well, it's only going to be an open convention if someone can get 300 delegates to sign their name to say, we want this person to be on the ballot. We want this person to be a nominee.
That's the first thing. Get on the ballot at the convention.
You need 300 people to sign. And here's the key part. You can't have more than 50 of them from one single state. So you can't just bring in one state delegation and have them carry you. You're going to need a diverse group.
And there's about 1,200 delegates?
Yeah, a little bit more than that.
The total national count. So you need 1/4 of the delegates to say, we want another candidate.
Yeah, you're going to need a large number. And then in that first round of balloting, there's no super delegates. And what a super delegate is they have the ability to vote for whoever they want, whenever they want. They're not beholden to voters. They're wild cards. They're in essence elected office holders or appointees.
They're the rock stars.
They are the rock stars, and they don't answer to anybody.
And they don't vote till round 2. Okay.
You guys are on a roll, but I do have to interrupt because we need to take a break. And everybody knows we're going to come back. We are going to be here, and we are going to continue this conversation. It's most interesting. We're in uncharted territory here on the public square.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square.
What is liberty worth to you? To our founding fathers, it was of such great value that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to establish a constitutional republic. At the close of the Constitutional Convention of 1787, Benjamin Franklin was asked what their deliberations had produced. His now famous reply was, "A republic, if you can keep it." Can we keep it? Is liberty still a cause worth sacrificing for? At the American Policy Roundtable, we believe it is, and do our best to bring truth to the public square. Defending liberty remains costly, and the vision of its worth still demands commitment. Will you stand with us? We cannot do this alone, but together we can continue working to shine the light of liberty across the land.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the public square.
Hey, thanks for listening today to the Public Square. I'm sure most of you know we do have a smartphone app, which is free in the App Store. Makes it convenient whenever you can't hear us on the radio to simply download the program and take it with you in the car, wherever you go. The Public Square in the App Store, your respective App Store, and of course online at thepublicsquare.com. Okay, so this uncharted territory, the president says, I'm not going to run. He's the incumbent, eligible for a second term. Dave, this is something that's got to be sorted out.
Jeff, you're still too young to remember an open convention, aren't you?
I was born in 1962. I became political in 1963. I was a political animal.
Were you watching 68 then?
Yes, I was actually.
Democrat National Convention was an open convention in 68.
I remember sitting on my father's lap.
Hubert Humphrey.
I remember sitting on my father's lap watching the Vietnam War on CBS News. So that would have been in February of 68, the Tet Offensive. I remember Johnson resigning. I remember RFK Sr.'s assassination, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. And I very clearly remember the Apollo 1 astronauts dying in that fire. Roger B. Chaffee, Ed White, and Gus Grissom.
So you've seen an open convention. Wayne, were you living in Chicago in 68?
Well, let me tell you, young kids. Yeah, I was not living in Chicago. I was in high school in 68, as I said earlier, and remember very clearly the Democratic Convention in Chicago, which I had no point of reference for Chicago at that time. Knew nothing of the city, but what I saw on television.
Okay. So I can remember 64 was in the Republican Party convention was Rockefeller and Goldwater, and that was an open convention. And I can remember Rockefeller's speech in 64.
I don't remember that.
So it's been a long, long time since people have watched. And I was 9 years old. Okay.
You were 9. You're a latecomer then.
Yeah. I don't know. It took me a while to wake up. I like baseball too much, I guess. I don't know. So the situation is we've not seen what would be termed as an open convention in a long time. And it appears that the Democrat process right now is designed to make it anything but an open convention. They want to basically secure so much that it's over in one ballot and they move on down the road. And so that's kind of where they're trying to go with the process. Now, there are so many questions. And it's what we don't know is what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm not sure anybody knows what's going on behind the scenes. For example, the question was, Joe Biden sort of disappeared because he has COVID, and he did this with a letter and not a speech. Well, that's completely unprecedented. Why wouldn't the president of the United States do what Lyndon Johnson did? I mean, even if he did it in a 2-minute speech.
Well, roughly 24 hours after, at the time of this recording, there's still no picture of him drafting the tweet, signing the letter, doing any of that.
The other interesting thing is there are 2 Twitter accounts or X accounts that Joe Biden has access to. His personal one, that's Joe Biden, and then the @POTUS one that he has. That announcement's not on the POTUS Twitter feed or X feed. It's just very interesting that it's only on the Joe Biden one, but it's not on his official POTUS one. It's almost like he's trying to get people to not think about the guy that's running is different than the guy that is supposed to be governing. It's almost like there's a separation between those two human beings.
Well, and that does bring up a serious process question as well. Go ahead, Wayne.
Something else that occurred to me is the letter did not endorse Kamala Harris when the letter was written, which I would have thought he would immediately take care of, but he followed it up and pretty quickly with, was that a tweet, Alan?
I think it was.
Yeah. But it seemed odd to me that he didn't do the endorsement in his letter.
There's so many questions. But again, because we're on unprecedented territory, we were talking earlier, Wayne, as a staff, we're saying if our group, the public policy group here at the American Policy Roundtable, was in charge of navigating these waters on behalf of the president, or if we were doing it through Evergreen Leadership Fund, let's say, our 501c4 organization, we were contracted to help navigate these waters because this is all public policy and it's electoral public policy. There are election laws that precede the actual practice of voting. And so we're kind of deep into that stuff. If we were assigned to this, we would have 6 full-time lawyers, and they would all have multiple 18-inch files in front of them, because this decision and the process that's unfolding in front of us right now has so many different elements where laws could be crossed based on actions that have never been challenged before. So, for example, just the question with the Federal Elections Commission, there are federal laws governing campaign funds and the transfer of funds and filings and names, et cetera. That's a whole legal arena that is open to contest. So maybe if Bobby Kennedy Jr. wants to get in and create a little havoc, he could get some lawsuits filed over here. Well, then you've got state election laws. There were 50 state elections in which Joe Biden was the victor and nominated to the presidency from that state. And those elections are, in essence, all now null and void. Well, who has the authority to void a federal election conducted legally in the states? Is that solely the power of the Democrat National Committee? I mean, and what's the process by which that happens? You see what I'm saying? There are so many, and we could keep going here. You know, federal state laws. Then you've got people inside the party who perhaps would feel defrauded, and they would challenge the process.
Well, And we haven't even gotten to the part where the gentleman we're talking about is currently the commander-in-chief. So if he can't run the campaign or be involved in the campaign, can he make the day-to-day decisions to have his finger on the nuclear codes?
Yeah, you've got the 25th Amendment lurking out there. I mean, it's rapidly approaching in somebody's rearview mirror.
There you'd have a whole nother set of lawyers working. So we are in some really, we're way past the crazy zone here. I mean, this is head spin plus.
You're talking about lawyers. I made the statement that you've made to me multiple times to a lawyer actually last week that I was with in South Carolina, where he made a lawyer joke and said we don't need more lawyers. I said, I'm going to make the argument that my boss, David Zanotti, makes all the time. We need more good lawyers. We need good lawyers.
A lot more good lawyers who can become good judges.
Yeah.
I vote for sending Rob to law school. What do you guys think?
Sounds good.
Let's send RJ.
I'll write the first check.
There we go. Let's send RJ. Let's send Rozzy. She'd be even better.
RJ's still got some athletics to play first.
Yeah, he's still. And long as he's throwing that thing 72 miles per hour when he can throw it 90, it's okay. All right. But yeah, we need more lawyers, without a doubt. We need more good lawyers who are going to become judges. And this is a very large legal situation that's unfolding. So once again, we're seeing history. Everything about this is history. Not even, and you say, well, let's get to the politics of it. Who's going to win the election? First off, it's still up for grabs as to who's running in the election, number one. Number two, we learned over the last tumultuous period to recognize that anything can happen. But by the grace of God, whoever the nominees are, I mean, look, anything can happen. Somebody can trip and fall. Somebody can have an aneurysm. I mean, God forbid any of that stuff, but anything can happen. This is like, it's really good for news media right now because you got to stay tuned because who knows what's coming next.
You do have to wonder, though, if we're not in some sort of simulation when there's folks that just a week ago were defending their candidate for their party. And now, a week later, they're making fun of the other party's candidate because of their age. like I saw that.
Really
I saw
funny,
that when it happened. They're like, "Well, your nominee's 78 years old." And I'm like, "Wait a minute here! Like a week ago, like."
It's also funny, Rob, along those lines, people are coming at Vance for flip-flopping on Trump over an 8-year time span. There's people that flip-flopped on Biden over an 8-hour time span.
Well, and
Very true.
Well, and
true.
John Fetterman made that point pretty clear when he talked about the people that were, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, basically said the people that are calling Joe Biden a patriot and doing the right thing and being noble are the ones with the hands on the knife in his back.
Huh. Wow, rather Shakespearean.
Hey, Dave, in addition to this radio program, there's a podcast called 1850. That needs to be heard in addition to this program, I think.
Well, we decided to do 1850 Main Street, which is kind of just a block off the public square, because we can get much more current and right to the news hour if need be in that format, and not having to be worrying about going through a network of over 200 stations, 235, 238 last time. Wayne, your program, First Person's on over 500 stations. We appreciate those stations immeasurably. We thank God for them. We pray people will support them and their advertisers. We're really delighted with the opportunity God's given us in terrestrial radio. But there's some times when we just have to go live or as close to live as we can. And 1850 Main Street gives us that ability. So we've got several episodes up that are right on the spot in regards to much more about this. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about right from the get-go, if you go visit there, is the question of a cover-up. Because that's a question that's got to be asked. Because I think underneath all of this, that's what's nagging the mindset of Americans. Doesn't matter what political party you are or none, there's a sense of something, there's things are being covered up here.
As soon as you say cover-up, I know there are people who are thinking, a conspiracy.
There's a difference.
Okay, explain.
Well, a cover-up is you're usually in the middle of something that you didn't see happening or you didn't want happening, and you're making up excuses as you go along.
Okay.
It's kind of getting caught with your hands in the cookie jar. Mm-hmm. A conspiracy is premeditated.
Okay.
And it takes a lot longer. And I'll tell you one thing about conspiracies, and I'm probably going to say too much.
And they're hard to pull off.
They are hard. They are hard to pull off. The biggest conspiracy that I've found in the study of history, from ancient civilizations to where we are today, in a lifetime, and that's just a little bit of work. Even though it's a lifetime, it's a little bit of work compared to all the things that we don't know.
Right.
But the biggest, most profound conspiracy I've ever found is the conspiracy of stupid. And what I mean by that is fallen human beings get caught doing stuff they shouldn't get done, and then the lies that they tell become a conspiracy. But really, when you get right down to it, it was really dumb.
Okay, for more on this, 1850 Main Street, use your podcast app on the phone or the computer and look up 1850 Main Street. That's it for this edition of The Public Square. Join us next time.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.